So what you can see on the screen here is our information from last year's grant report. This is the amount and number of grants that were made in each of our 7 focus areas. Arts and humanities, career pathways, complementary education, health, human services, sustainable communities, and youth and families. In 2022, we granted more than $1.7 million to 77 different projects with an average grant amount of $22,578. We purposefully don't put a maximum on our grant requests, so you can ask for as much money as you need, because we don't want to prevent a great idea from getting funded, just arbitrarily because we've decided that this is the number that we're cutting it off at. However, we do strongly suggest that you take a look at what's been funded in the past in each area as a guide. So you'll be able to see that our largest grant last year was $80,000. So keeping that in mind can help you kind of tailor the ask to what's most appropriate. So, and then we can go to the next one, Jen. Okay. So I would like to recognize some of the donors here. The ones listed here have created endowments that are supporting the community grants program. It's their forethought and generosity that provided the funds for the community grants program, and they're the reason that we're going to be able to continue to award these funds in perpetuity. Let's go to the next one. All right, there are 3 funds that I'd like to highlight. They were established by donors with a specific purpose in mind, and so they were kind of folded into our program when we combined all of our grants in 2015. So the United Cerebral Palsy of Black Hawk region set aside dollars for organizations providing services to persons with disabilities, especially for programs that promote inclusion. We really want to encourage groups that don't exclusively serve these populations to consider these dollars. Programs that are designed to be accessible for everyone are eligible for this. The John W. Lundeen Historic Preservation Fund seeks to celebrate the region's history and preserve historical integrity. And that is actually in arts and humanities, not sustainable communities, which we've been using that mistake for many years, so apologies. And the Margaret K. Aldine Christian Ministry Fund funds programs that meet the food, housing, and medical needs of the poor, primarily through organizations with a Christian emphasis. So these criteria for each of these funds is baked into the focus areas, so you don't need to do anything different when completing your application. But we do want you to be aware that these funds exist. And our reviewers are looking specifically for projects that fulfill those intentions. So you just fill out the application as usual, but know that there may be additional dollars available if you fall into one of these categories. So because of all of these donors and the fact that they chose to endow these funds, their legacy will allow us to continue to invest in the Northern Illinois community for years to come. And now I'm going to hand it off to James Patterson. He is going to talk about all of the changes for this year.
All right. Well, thank you, Sarah. Glad to be here to do this with you all. I get to talk about the Community Grants Program, which is our longest running, broadest funding, largest grant program. And the first thing I really want to talk about when we go to this next slide are the various resources that you have available to you for this grant program. The first one really being the community grants guidelines. There's a paper version, and then on the website, there's also a version. Both of those really get into the specifics of what you have to do to be eligible, what we're looking for to fund, what kinds of things we will not fund, and then a lot of the program specifics. So that's a great place to start. I would definitely read through that first. A couple other great resources that are on our website are the grant seekers, or the grant seekers page, resources for grant seekers, and resources for current grantees pages. Those are really helpful. We'll go to the next slide and talk about some of the specific things that you can look for. So within the portal, if you've been in there, you've probably seen that we do have these various tutorials that you can access. And it's anything from how to copy your application to how to complete the rest of the application. So just different tutorials throughout, like using the collaborator feature, for an example, to have other folks help you work on the application. On the web pages that I mentioned before, there's an FAQ section, a lot of the frequently asked questions that we do get asked. A good place to go if you have some questions. Really helpful is the sample budget and budget narrative. It really breaks down what we're looking for when it comes to the budget, the level of detail that we're hoping for, how to group things perhaps. So that's a great place to go as you're working on your budget. There's also a document called Working with PDFs. Sometimes PDFs can be challenging to get the right file size and so on. This document will walk you through how to work with PDFs using free software that's available. We also have examples of evaluation plans and result statements that are posted on the website. Those are really good too. Much like the sample budget and budget narrative, it really gives you a layout of what we're looking for and what it should kind of look like. The grants report is a great resource too, because you can see what types of different projects are being funded within the various focus areas. So that is also helpful. And you can see the grant sizes and so on too, which is a good thing. We also have a Word version of the application posted on the website so that you can do a number of things with it. For one thing, it can be helpful if you're working with a group. You sit down with that Word doc and maybe mark that up, and then somebody takes it to the computer and does the actual application. It can also be helpful if for some reason, there's a sort of a blip in the internet and you lose connectivity. You would still have all of your work in that Word document that you could then transfer over. The proposal review guidelines are also a really good resource for you because it's really inside information. These are the guidelines that the reviewers use as they're scoring your applications. And there again, that has to do with that transparency principle too. And of course, this PowerPoint will be available to you as well in the if you click on that link to that Google folder. And we'll go to the next slide. So to be eligible, you need to be a 501c3 nonprofit organization or a religious organization or a unit of government or a public university or college. And you need to be actively serving the public for at least 1 year as of December 1st of 2023 in this case, within the year that you're applying. So, and our funding is restricted to benefit the people of Boone, Ogle, Stevenson, and Winnebago County. That's important. And we can't fund religious purposes, although we do make a lot of grants to faith-based organizations for non-religious purposes. We'll go to the next slide. So you also need to be current on reporting. That's an important piece too. If you have completed your most recent grant, then we would encourage you to complete your online final report. But if you haven't, and that's not uncommon, we will accept interim reports so that the committee just likes to know how the current funded program is progressing, and that gives them that information. So if you are not sure, you should contact Lisa. Lisa is a great resource for you, and she will let you know what you need to do. We'll go to the next slide. As Sarah said, and it's worth repeating, we did move the grant cycle up this year. So please be aware of that. The application is currently open. It opened on Tuesday at 8 a.m. And of course, we want you to, if you have not registered already on the portal, go ahead and do that now. And take a look at the application too. A good idea to get in there as early as you can to find out any of the things that are going to be required of you. Some of those things take some lead time. Maybe you have to ask other people for some documentation and so on. And so it's good to know what you need ahead of time. And the submission deadline is going to be August 15th this year at 5 o'clock. And you'll, as Sarah said, you'll know the results before December 1st. So before the really busy Christmas or New Year time comes up. And you'll have about 14 months to complete your programming. So yeah, we'll go to the next slide here. And I'm going to take a drink really quickly. All right, thank you for that. So it is a competitive process. Unfortunately, we do not have unlimited funds, and we really wish that we had more funds because there's a lot of really good programs and projects that we simply are not able to fund. So last year, we received 98 applications that totaled about just over 2 million. And we were able to award 77 grants for about 1.7 million. So there's a significant deficit there. To accomplish this, to be able to pick what we find or feel are the very best, we have sort of a 3-layered review process, and it begins with staff. Staff goes through and just checks for eligibility and completeness. So this like pass-fail sort of things. There's not really a judgment being made in that regard. After that, it goes to our committees, and they spend about 3 weeks reviewing these applications, scoring them using these proposal review guidelines that I mentioned before, very thoughtfully. And then they will actually get together and have a conversation. We do have scores, but the scores are not the end all. The conversation is extremely critical and important to the process. Once they make recommendations, those go to our board for approval, and they make the final determination. So we really strive to be fair and objective in our review, and we do that through a number of different things. For one thing, we involve the community in our decision making. It's not just in our house, our office, so to speak. All of our committees, and there's 8 of them, are made up of community members and people on our board of trustees. And of course, our board of trustees is made up of community members as well. We also have a very robust conflict of interest policy. So if someone on the committee is affiliated, say as a board member or staff member, something along those lines, with one of the applicants, they are they actually leave the room. They don't participate in the conversation about that particular application, and they don't vote. So we also try to keep the identity of our committees anonymous, so that there's no opportunity for any lobbying of that sort. And we really try to provide the same type of advice to all of the applicants when they ask. And we also have sort of a policy of not having actual meetings with grant applicants during the time that the application is open. But that does not mean that you can't call us if you have technical concerns with the application or specifications of the program and what we're looking for, that kind of thing. So please feel free to do that. Lisa's your first stop for that, and she's great. So, oh yeah, so this is the exciting part, folks. Application revamp, and Sarah alluded to this, of course. We've spent the last several months going through a process of trying to just revise the application for a few different reasons. For one thing, we want to right-size the application based on the request size. So if you're asking for $5,000, you shouldn't have to go through the same rigmarole that you have to go through for $50,000, for an example. We also were looking very carefully for questions that maybe were unnecessary or that seemed to elicit duplicate responses, because that's extra work that does not need to happen. And we really tried to provide some clarity in the questions themselves, either through the language that we used or through adding examples right in the questions themselves. We'll go to the next slide here. A big piece of this is this new tiered application system. So what we're doing is for applications that are over 50,000, it's a full app and the 2 most recent audits. But between 5,001 and 50,000, it's a simplified application and only one 990, the most recent 990 that you have. And then if it's 5,000 or less, it's a further simplified application, and we're not asking for organizational financials or quotes, except that if for some reason it comes up during the review process that there's a need to ask for that, we may do that. So the result here really is that there are fewer questions across the board on the application. As you can see, the smallest application has been reduced by 25%. The medium application has been reduced by 23%, and even the large application has been reduced by 12%. So hopefully you will find that helpful. We're really excited about it. And we're going to take a look at the next slide and see some of the other features that we have. We've created a simplified integrated budget form. So no more downloading of the Excel budget template and trying to make sure you're typing in the right fields and getting error messages and then having to PDF that and then upload it and all of that. So that has been eliminated. Thank you. And we've actually eliminated part of the, some of the columns and things that we're asking for in the budget. So it's simplified too. We do have on that budget a dedicated indirect cost field, trying to make it very obvious that we want you to claim your 15% indirect cost because that's the right thing to do, as we said in the grant making philosophies. So I'll show you that later in an example. And as I mentioned, we built more examples directly into the questions for easy reference. Did that in particular in the evaluation plan measuring results section, which sometimes trips people up. But we're hoping that if you see the examples just right there, maybe it'll really help you know what you need to put in there. And we added a number of additional upload fields just so that you don't have to struggle so much to get every PDF under a certain size. So because of all these changes, I mean, we normally do a survey after the deadline to find out what you thought of the process this year. We didn't do it last year because we knew we were going to make a lot of changes this year. But it's going to be especially important this year because of all these different changes. We really encourage you to complete that survey when you get it and let us know if we did achieve what we were trying to do. So of course, all applications must be submitted online, as I'm sure you know. And a little note about if you are applying for a currently funded program, which happens very often, and it's certainly something we are willing to do. But what I would encourage you to do, because it's to your best advantage, is to maybe complete a little more thorough interim report. There's been many cases where the actual report that the committee reads is actually more, it provides more information to the committee than the actual application does. In fact, it's the thing that's the selling point in many cases, if you're having good success. So that's an important thing to consider. And a note about focus areas, we do have 7 focus areas that you can choose from. And sometimes, I actually do get a lot of questions about, well, what focus area should I use here, for this particular project? But don't get too worried about it because there is a lot of permeability between different focus areas. There's overlap between sustainable communities and arts and humanities, for example, or there's overlap between human services and youth and families. So, and really in a lot of different areas there are. Education overlaps with a lot of different things too. So just pick the one that you think makes the most sense for you. And if we look at it and we say, oh gosh, I think this committee will respond better to it or understand it better, then we'll move it for you. You don't have to worry about that. So back to the attachments piece and why it's important that we keep the size of the files at a certain level. Usually it's either a picture file or it's going to be a PDF, and the PDFs are usually need to be under 5 megabytes, as they call it. And the reason for that is because our reviewers have all different levels of technology that they're working with, and it needs to be to where they can easily open these documents. Yes, so there's a 3 application limit. And that's 3 unique applications per organization. So you couldn't do the same application and submit it to one focus area or 2 different focus areas. They do have to be unique applications, and they can go into any focus area. So you might have, let's say you did 3 and they were all human services. Well, they would all go to human services, but maybe it's spread out of 2. It can be either way. It just depends on where that application fits. And as far as for this particular rule, if you're an organization that has a foundation that's a separate entity, those 2 organizations we treat as one organization because they're both supporting the same organization. And just another part of the application is the interim report upload field. That's to make it easy for you to upload that interim report if you do have currently funded programs. So looking at the support types are important. There's a question where you select what your support type is. It's important because it's going to bring up more relevant questions for the type of support you're looking for. As you can see here, an event would be something that lasts like less than a week. It's what you normally would think of as an event. The project is something that has a start and an end date and typically does not recur. Program is much like project, except that oftentimes it does recur. Most times it does recur. Usually it's like your ongoing programming that you normally do. And capital commodity, we'll take a deeper dive into on the next slide here. These, first of all, are not eligible for multi-year grants, just so you know, but these are unique and don't fit the same type of mold that the other three support types do. So they're kind of pulled aside differently. So capital, what we're talking about is what you might think of, you know, buying equipment, purchasing vehicles, remodeling projects, things of that nature. And you can see, you know, we've got like a van purchase or bathroom remodel, furnishing an area of a facility. There's a different way you want to respond when you're looking at your evaluation plan and that sort of thing. A commodity, the way that we look at this is if you're purchasing a number of items that you're basically just going to distribute without there being an overall program or plan around that. And it's just the idea that if we give a kid a backpack, then that backpack is going to help them in school and they're going to be able to have a place to put their supplies and so on. There's not really a program around that per se. So that would be the case. Now, there are certain situations where, like this example up here with the art supplies for a painting class, well, the painting class is a project, right? It is a program. So you can measure results of that program in a different way. So that would still be a program or a project. So we'll go to the next slide. Demographics sometimes are tricky, right? But it's an important thing to consider because we need to be as equitable as we can be. We need to know who we are serving. And in the application, what we're asking for are estimates, right? We're asking for projections. So in that case, we use percentages because that's an easier way to do it. But in the report, we're actually going to ask for actual numbers. So think about how you want to track those numbers. Now, in some cases, this is pretty easy. Maybe you have a registration process, you know exactly who you're serving, and you can track that demographic information very easily. There are other situations where that's not as easy. Say it's an event of some sort. You're not going to know exactly who is there unless you have some sort of registration system. But a lot of times these are just open events, people can come. So in those situations, I tell people to kind of take a visual survey. Look around the room or look around the environment and make some guesses. They're guesses of percentages of these various demographics. What are you seeing? I mean, does it look like there's more female to male? How does it, you know, how does that look? And kind of come up with percentages in your mind, take that and look at what your overall attendance was and use those numbers. It's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but it gives us some idea. So we'll go to the next slide, where we get to talk about the budget a little bit. So this is an example. It's actually a screenshot of the new integrated budget form. And what you want to do with this particular budget is only include the expenses and the revenue from this particular charitable activity that they're doing, not your overall organizational budget. This is just for this charitable activity. And you can see in the blue there, that's where we've got that dedicated indirect cost field. So we're really encouraging you to use that. And you can see you would have right above that, you've got the grant request from us. And then we're kind of calling the indirect costs a grant too. But so those are both right there. And we really encourage you to use that. If you look on the right-hand side, we ask the status of that revenue source. So sometimes you've just requested funds. Sometimes it's an estimate of earned income, like in the example, the tutoring fees is a good example there. Sometimes it's pledged, but you don't have it yet. So whatever it is, include that. And always make sure that your revenue is either equal to or greater than the expenses. And so why could it be greater? Well, it might be greater if you've requested a number of funds, but you don't know what you've gotten yet. So you have to have contingencies, right? So you've over requested to make sure that you can fund your program. We'll go to the next slide, which is the expense side of the budget. And there again in blue, you can see the indirect expense. You're going to offset on both sides, right? For that, it's an expense, and yet it's also revenue. You're asking us to cover that expense. Another thing here in the pink, you'll see an in-kind item. So this is classroom rental that's being provided in kind by the school. Can we flip back to the previous slide quickly? If you'll look, you'll see the revenue number 7 is ABC School District in kind. That's a corresponding item that's being provided by the school district. So anytime you do an in kind, you should have it on both sides of the equation, right? And by the way, it is important to include the in kind contributions. That's real support, and it shows support for your program. So, and a lot of times showing support for your program like that kind of gives it a little bit more credibility in some ways, right? All right, we'll go, we don't have to go back to the expense side because we're already there. Jennifer's doing amazing. So you can see in the yellow here, this is my example of sometimes because there are only so many lines on the budget, right? You have to combine similar things together in one line item. And so that's what we've done here. We've got some flyers and social media expenses. That's all marketing kinds of things. So put that together. In your budget narrative, you would sort of list that out a little bit more because you've got a little bit more space to do that. This is sort of the Cliff Notes version, and the budget narrative is a little more detailed. So we'll go to the next slide, and I believe we just need to see if I've talked about everything that I should have talked about, and I did. So we'll go to the next slide. And I did again, doing good so far. All right, so quotes. 2 quotes are required if you have a request over 5,000, no quotes under 5,000 at this point. So you might find, and it's 2 quotes, by the way, 2 quotes for those line items that are over 5,000, I should say. So sometimes though, that's not really practical. Sometimes you may have a vendor that you've worked with for years that always gives you a cut rate, and there's not going to be a comparable bid anywhere. If that is the case, then provide us a letter from that vendor stating that in place of the quotes. It's silly to have you go out and get a second quote when you're not going to, you're not going to use that quote because you already have somebody that's built in to do that. So that's what we'd like you to do in that case. And I think that's it. Let's go to the next slide.
Don't you judge me. You're the selfish one. You're the one who charged his own brother for a Bluth frozen banana. I mean, it's 1 banana, Michael. What could it cost? $10?
You've never actually set foot in a supermarket, have you?
I don't have time for this.
So a little comic relief there. So as I said, quotes are only required for requests over 5,000 and only for single line items that are 5,000 or more. Remodeling projects almost always need a quote usually you get a quote when you do a remodeling project, so that's easy to do. And yeah, we've talked about the rest of this. So we can go to the next slide. A little bit more about indirect expenses. Again, we will fund 15% of what you have requested from us in indirect expenses. And we really want you to claim that. So continue on to the next slide. Are some examples of what would be direct and what would be indirect. It's really more important to know what's direct than indirect because we don't really want you to tell us what indirect expenses you're covering with the 15%. It's just generally indirect. Use it for whatever you need to. But the direct expenses are things that can directly be attributed to the program. The marketing expenses specifically for that event, the supplies specifically for that art program, insurance that you had to have because of an event, for an example. So those kinds of things. We'll go to the next slide. So now I get to talk about the results and budgeting workshops that we do every year. We found that the measuring results, evaluation plan piece, and the budgeting piece seem to be the bugaboos sometimes for folks. And so we like to provide opportunities to learn more about what we're looking for. And I know different funders look for different things too. So it's helpful for that purpose too. These are practical, these are hands-on, and Lisa always provides us with great snacks. So you can look forward to that. And you can see here that we have 3 that we're going to be doing, and they're in person. And we will be sending a link to register in our Grantee Updates newsletter soon. We'll go to the next slide where we have a new thing that we're doing. We're calling them applicant work sessions. You can come hang out with Lisa and I, and we'll help you with your application if you have specific questions, or maybe you want to work on your evaluation plan a little bit, or whatever. We're there for you. And we have 2 of those sessions set up this year, as you can see those times. And as with the other, we'll send a link for registration in the Grantee Updates email. And if you are awarded a grant, we ask you to attend our grantee orientation if you have not been in the last couple of years. Some things do change, and we like to basically talk about primarily how we can help you promote the good work that you're doing, and then also how you're going to, what you need to do for the reporting that's going to be due. It's always good to get ahead of that. You want to plan for your reporting because it makes it so much easier to do the reporting when the time comes. And we'll have multiple sessions so that you can find one that will fit your schedule. We're going to do those during January, the week of January 8th. And now I get to turn it over to Lisa DeLange, who will talk about the application itself.
Hi, I'm Lisa. And if you know me from the past cycles, or you know me at all, you know that the Community Grants Program is my favorite time of year. And that's because I get to help you all and support the valuable work you do in our community. So we're going to start off when you go to apply on our main CFNIL.org homepage. And I just put arrows to all of the places, and it's probably not even all of the places, but I put arrows to a lot of the places where you could find the grants information. James talked about some of the resources. There is a ton of valuable information in here. So take a look through the website, watch some of our tutorials. There's some FAQs in there. And really, I feel like it gives you so much information. Do it before you get started or when you're in there and you run into an issue. But also don't hesitate to call me if you need help. So up on the right, upper right-hand corner, the apply for grant. Thank you, Jen. That is where you're going to start. And so you would click on that and it would take you to our portal. If you already have an account, you can go ahead and log in. If you don't know if you have an account, please call me. If you need to change anything on your account, please call me. Once that account is created, that organizational information needs to be changed by somebody here at the office. If you don't have an account, you want to create a new account. And the sooner the better. Please don't wait till the last minute and then have to rush and get everything in the last couple of days. I know it's exciting, but it's stressful. So get started early, go through it, make sure you have everything you need and lined up, and then you can come to our work sessions or call me if you have any issues. We can go to the next page. If you are starting a brand new account, you're going to have this page, and be careful when you're entering your information. Like I said, once that organizational information is set, you have to call here to change it. If you'll create your account, your personal account here as well. And the username is case sensitive. It is your email. So make sure when you're entering that, it's entered the same each time. If you have any questions or running into anything, give me a call. Sorry, go ahead, Jed. I think, yeah, you'll start out with one user. The primary person who's going to submit the applications should start an account, and then you can add people as you get into the application if you need help or you're working with multiple people on an application. Okay, so this is what you're going to get when you initially log on. It's your user dashboard. And here you can see your active requests, you can see historical requests, your organizational information, your information, which you can edit your information through here. And this is also where you would apply. Once you go to apply, you're going to get to this page. And this page has some good information, some video tutorials on how to use some of the features in the application. There's also the preview feature here. If you'd like to get in there and kind of see what your questions are going to be ahead of time, you can go in there and kind of put your scenario in, like you're going to apply for a grant under $5,000 and it's in the arts focus area. It'll give you the questions that are specific to that. The preview does not autosave, but the application does autosave. There is a save button, but it's mostly for peace of mind. People got really nervous when we didn't have a save button and would call and worry. So it's in there. You can push it, it'll alert you to some fields that you haven't completed, but it does autosave. So you should be safe unless you're having an issue with your computer. Okay, I think we got all that. Yeah, that too. Here are some more features that are on the page. Copy previous answers. That is going to be very helpful and save you a ton of time if you've applied for a grant with us before, especially if it's the same grant, like the same program you're applying for multiple years, but even if it's not, it's going to be helpful. It'll import answers from previous applications that have the same question. And then you can go in there and edit it if something has changed. There is the collaborate feature. And you would want to use that if you're going to be working with multiple people on the application. So you can send an email invitation through the portal and it will invite the person to collaborate with you. You can set permissions for that person. So if you only want them to view or if you only want them to be able to edit and not submit, you'll be able to set all of those permissions there, and then multiple people will be able to work on that application. The questions list is there if you would like to just get a look at the entire application and every single question that could be on your application, whether it would pertain to you or not. We also have a place to download some pictures. I encourage you to download pictures if you can. Sometimes that can make a big impact with our selection committees if they can see the part of the program you're talking about, or if you're applying for parking lot repair and they can see how bad it is. I think we had somebody apply for carpeting last year, and at first maybe you think, oh, it's just carpeting, but when you got to look at that carpeting and then they explain what they use it for and how people with disabilities go through that area, that might have been the tipping point for the selection committee. So if you can, please use pictures. When you do submit those pictures, you're allowing us to use those for promotional things that we need them for here at the Community Foundation. If you would not like us to use them for whatever reason, just put do not use at the end of the picture. And oh, sorry, we also like you to use a naming convention. It listed it in the previous slide. It also lists it on the application itself so that your files don't get mixed up with somebody else's files in the Dropbox, because they all go into one big pool and then we separate them into different focus committees. I think I hit on all that, and I'm going to hand it over to Heather Rapp.
Good morning. So I'm kind of going to close out a little bit of information today about a unique opportunity that we have for grants that will be coming up. Like Lisa said, my name is Heather, and I am a newer member of the CFNIL team. I am an educator from the area, and I taught for 16 years. But what's unique about my experience with the Community Foundation is that when I was a student at Rockford College, I was approached about doing an internship with a special youth program called In Youth We Trust. And so my senior year, I thought, this is crazy. I'm going to do an internship. I'm student teaching. I was working at the public library, but I'm so glad that I took that opportunity on. So that senior year in college, I really learned about the power of grants in our community, but also I learned even more importantly, that kids can have a voice in that process. And so I left that senior year and I had worked with these amazing teenagers from the area who had become grant makers and learned that process. I didn't know that was limited to seniors or high schoolers. So there's a lot of students who've come through kindergarten and fourth grade in this area who learned a lot about philanthropy because it was such a unique opportunity to learn about that as a young educator. So I am back with the Community Foundation now to oversee our scholarship programming, but I also am the Youth We Trust liaison. I want to introduce you to Kate Black as well. You can see her picture there. Kate's our new program and development associate, and she helps run In Youth We Trust with me. So if you decide to engage with our youth grants, you may be talking to one or both of us. So the In Youth We Trust Council is a council that is always changing members, but it is always comprised of local high school students from our 4-county region. Like we said earlier, we serve Boone, Ogle, Stevenson, and Winnebago counties. And so every fall, we look for council members to join our group. And so these are some of the members from this past year. We'll go to the next slide and I'll tell you a little bit more about the council. So like I said, every fall we admit new members through an application process. And when we really get down to business, we have one meeting a month on a Saturday morning. Students come to the Community Foundation and they learn all about philanthropy, the entire grant making process, as well as volunteerism. And it's a great way for them to enhance the skills that they're learning within their schools, but to bring that into a space that allows them to really practice those things. We teach the council members about grant making philosophies, and we really do our best to mirror what your experience is through the community grants program. This is a way to uplift the youth, the voices of youth in our community, as well as bringing their unique perspective to the grant making process. And so if you know of a student that you think would be interested in this opportunity, we would love for you or for them to email us at iywt@cfnil.org so that we can send them information about our upcoming year. So really, I'm here to talk to you as grant seekers. So we're going to talk a little bit about what we have to offer you and your organization. So this is a great picture of some of the grantees that were awarded grants. We have a big celebration at the end of each school year where we invite grantees to come and celebrate with us. On the next slide, you'll see a little bit more information about how the youth grant cycles work. So each year, the council has about $40,000 that they make decisions about, and those same principles that we follow apply to our youth cycles. So the council does a fall application and a spring application. In the fall, we open up a grant cycle that is specifically available to youth groups. So if your organization has a youth component, or you know youth in the area who are trying to make their community better, that fall application is specifically designed and dedicated to giving those dollars to youth groups. One of the things that makes it really unique is not only are our council members learning about the grant making process, but the local youth groups who engage in the application process are all invited to come into the Community Foundation and do a special interview with the council members so that they can talk more about their proposal. We distribute those funds in the winter, and those students follow the same process that adults would, where they complete their process and then there's a follow-up with a report at the end. So it's a great learning opportunity for our council members, but also for any youth in our area who would like to do a project. The adult cycle, which is what you may be more interested in for your organization, happens in the spring. And so it is a pared down application. You can apply for up to $5,000. And the application runs through the same GLM portal that you would be creating your account for our community grants program. We don't do an interview portion with the adult cycle, but we do distribute those funds in late spring. We invite you in to come to our celebration so that you can meet the council members, and you do a follow-up report the following year. You are able to apply for grants through our community grants program, as well as through the In Youth We Trust application when that opens. We will have all of the dates and updated information closer to the beginning of the school year. It is a student-led, student-centered program, and so they will be doing a lot of the planning and organizing this summer, and so you can check back on our website to look for more information about that as we get closer to those dates. And if you have any questions in the meantime, you are more than welcome to reach out to me or to Kate via email or give us a call here at the foundation. We would love to talk to you about the amazing things that the CFNIL youth are doing. If there's any questions, you can also pop them in the chat box, and I will make sure to respond to those while we're in the Zoom today. Yeah.
Hey,
Go ahead,
so
Sarah.
what's that?
No, I said, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, and say if there's any questions right now, we can take them. Otherwise, we just have a few more slides to finish up. Nope. Okay. Let's see. So Becky's asking, if I apply for a grant for my public elementary school, will the organization be my school or the school district? James, I think you can take this one. You're muted. There you go.
No.
Working on it. So for community grants, it's going to be the school district.
Okay.
It's pretty simple.
Yep.
Cool.
Okay, why don't we go to the next slide? So this is just a little plug. We do work with volunteers. I think we're pretty open about the fact that CFNIL staff does not make any funding decisions. All of our funding decisions are made by the community. We have a veritable army of volunteers who help us review scholarships in particular. And we are growing. We have, we'll be adding at least 12 scholarships next year. And we're gonna break $500,000 in terms of awards. So we need help. We need folks who are interested in reviewing scholarships to help us make these decisions. It's a very time condensed way to volunteer. It's you do one training and then you read and review your applications over 2 weekends or 10 days. And then you make the funding selections with a committee in one in-person meeting. And that's it. It takes place over about a 2-week period. So it's 20 hours in a fairly short time, but then you're done. And it's a really awesome way to see all of the great things that people in our community are doing. You see all the stuff that the students have done, the things that they're going to do. We have one volunteer who every year leaves the room and says, "My faith in humanity has been restored." So if you need to have your faith restored a little bit, this is a great way to do it. If you're interested, shoot Lisa an email, or myself, anybody, any of us, you send us an email and we'll get you set up. We do have a recruitment meeting where we kind of explain the process in more detail coming up in September, and there'll be another one in January because the scholarship process won't start until the spring. So we hope you can join us.
There is another question in chat. If we apply for operating and capital funds for the same program, would we make 2 separate applications? James?
Yeah, I'm going to reread it really quickly.
Okay.
So to begin with, we don't do general operating grants. Basically, we're trying to help with that through the indirect cost for project grants or program grants. So you wouldn't do 2 applications. But if you had a capital project and then you had some other kind of program, you would do 2 applications. Does that make sense?
And if she meant like operating as in the program costs of a program and like the program has a capital expense associated with it, it would still be 2 applications.
Well, in that case, if the capital expense is something that directly supports that program, then it probably would be 1 application. It'd just be one of the expenses.
Budget pieces.
Yeah, it'd just be one of the budget line items.
Yeah.
And if that's not clear, you have a specific situation in mind, give me a call. I'm happy to talk with you.
Okay. Oh, we had one more announcement that.
Yeah. One last plug. Last year we hosted a couple of get-togethers in our backyard at our offices right on the river. We have a beautiful yard that we don't get to use very often. We've got a patio, and so we wanted to give folks an opportunity to come enjoy that, as well as hang out and get to talk to each other about things that aren't related to work. So the vibe is all work or all play, no work, not the other way around. So we are doing it again. We are hosting just 1 this year instead of 3 nonprofit happy hours in our backyard at the foundation. There will be yard games. There might be karaoke potentially. There will be beverages of all kinds, and there will be an ice cream truck. So there's no need to RSVP. Everyone is welcome. So bring your staff and your friends to come and hang out with us on July 20th from 4 to 7 p.m. Conveniently, there is a workshop at the foundation immediately before that. So you can come learn about grants and then drink your problems away. So
Eat ice cream your problems away.
Ice cream your problems away. Yes. So again, no need to RSVP. Just come and hang out with us.
Okay, we've got one more question in the chat from Amy. If we are applying for grants, can we also write letters of support for other organizations without negatively impacting our chances for awards?
I would say absolutely. I don't think that would have any bearing on your chance of getting an award.
If anything, it's an indication of your collaboration, of your
Yeah,
collaborative
absolutely.
nature, but
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Which we encourage.
Yes. Okay.
All right. Any other questions? You can feel free to unmute yourself or wave at us too, if that's easier.
And I will say someone had asked early in the presentation if these slides and the recording will be available. Yes, they will. A link will be sent to everyone who registered for the session, and we will also upload it to our website on the grant resources page.
All right, well, if there's no other questions, I just want to say thank you again, and please don't hesitate to reach out and let us know if there's anything we can help with. We'll see you this fall.
There is another question here.
Yes, I see it. Sorry, it's woo. Thank you for all the thanks. Let's see. I represent a statewide org looking to work with local partners. Am I still eligible to apply for a grant? Great question.
Yeah, it is a good question. And the answer really has to do with who's being served. It's all about serving the folks in Winnebago, Boone, Ogle, and Stevenson County. So to the extent that it's serving that population, yes.